So, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us as part of our American Spaces celebration of Earth Day 2021. My name is Paul Gordon, American Spaces Director at U.S. Embassy Zambia, and I'm pleased to share with you this program today with three amazing environmental advocates joining us to talk about climate change in Zambia. All three panelists have participated in U.S. government exchange programs that allowed them to travel to the United States to discuss key environmental and other social issues with leaders from around the world. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce our three speakers today. Today we have with us Mr. Billy Lombe. He's the founder CEO of the Center for Zero Waste and Development in Zambia. And we also have with us today Chanda Mwale, the operations manager for Wildlife Producers Association of Zambia. And finally, we have Maggie Mwape, the executive director for Center for Environment Justice. And all three of our speakers have many more titles and roles that they have done in the present and in the past. And so I'll let them introduce themselves and tell you a little bit about the work that they do. So we'll go ahead and get started. So starting with Ms. Chanda. Chanda, could you please introduce yourself and tell us how you have worked to address climate change within your organization?
Awesome, thanks. Thank you everybody for joining us this afternoon. As Paul has mentioned, my name is, I'm zooming a little bit out. My name is Chanda Mwale. I'm with the Wildlife Producers Association of Zambia. I'm currently working as their operations manager. And to give you a little bit of background around what we do as an organization, we exist to try and contribute positively towards building a wildlife economy in Zambia. And how we do that is we are supporting the sustainable use of wild lands and wildlife habitat. We do this through various means. Because we're a membership-based organization, our members are using nature and various patches and extensive areas of Zambia sustainably. Most of this is done through game ranching, and how that contributes towards climate change and climate change adaptation is, if you can imagine a large parcel of land, 250, 500, 1,000 hectares, that is being utilized sustainably. So minimal disturbance, minimum degradation to the system. We are allowing different species and animals to exist on this land. What that does is it increases the biodiversity of the area, and biodiversity broken down is basically just the variety of species, whether it be plant life, animal life, and so on in a specific area. And when you have increased biodiversity, what you're doing then is you are increasing the resilience of that area to climate shocks. So when we speak about climate change, often we associate the impacts to, for example, increased floods, increased droughts, increased temperatures.
Can you hear me?
The negative impacts would be.
Go ahead, Chanda. It's okay. We'll come back to Kathy.
Okay, great. And so when we think climate change and the potential impact of climate change on us as human beings and nature, we often think about extreme events. And then on the adaptation side of things, and I believe that was supposed to be part of the intro, a bit of an explanation on adaptation versus mitigation, but Billy will definitely go into that for you all. But on the adaptation perspective, when you have systems, and this is at a broader scale, when you have systems that are a lot more resilient, systems that are biodiverse, the impacts, the climate change impacts are reduced because your system is basically a lot more intact. And so that is the work that we do as WPAZ. We contribute in the sense that we increase sustainable use of land, but also on a food security perspective, a lot of our members are contributing towards production of legal game meat in Zambia. Not nyama ya musanga, which is illegal bushmeat, but legal game meat, which is contributing towards food security. And lastly, a lot of the land that is used for game ranching is actually marginal land. And due to impacts of climate change, converting the land use to something like game ranching is actually in most cases a lot more compatible. So I'm going to pause there for now, and then let the next person come in.
Great. Thanks, Chanda, for that introduction. We'll go ahead and turn it over now to Maggie Mwape. Maggie, can you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Great. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining. My name is Maggie Palomape. I'm working with the Center for Environment Justice. I am the executive director. We have been in existence now for 10 years. We celebrated our anniversary last July. Our focus area is on environmental protection. Oh, my video is going off. Sorry. Environmental protection and sustainable management of natural resources. I will try to go live. It's failing a bit. So we have about 5 pillars that we look at CEJ. One is extractives, which focuses on issues to do with CSR, that is corporate social and environmental responsibility, as well as the displacements, the compensations and resettlements. And the other pillar is environmental protection, where we are looking at nature conservation. We focus on forests and wetlands. And then the third pillar is sustainable management of natural resources, where we promote alternative sources of energy that is available, accessible, and affordable. And the fourth pillar is agriculture, where we are trying to promote food security in the rural areas where there are mining investments. And then, to be more specific, to focus on issues to do with climate change, we are trying to build capacity for the youth in the country to be climate change negotiators, because you will agree with me that issues of climate change are more technical. And if we are going to have young people that are well informed to sit on the table, both at national and local level, they need to be capacity built. Apart from that, we also initiate climate resilient initiatives that we are implementing in these rural communities. So you will understand that as we are trying to address issues of climate change, it is very important that we have initiatives that could benefit the communities on the grassroots. Many other times, we are focusing on issues to do with policy, of course, which is very good at the same time. But then for us as CJ, we think capacity building a next generation with information around mitigation and adaptation is very important. Also, to ensure that we have young people that understand the UNFCCC processes to ensure that they can actually bring solutions to the issues that we are facing. So that is the introduction, and I'm so happy to be part of the panel to share more about issues of climate change in the country. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Maggie. All right, and last but certainly not least, we have Mr. Billy Lombe here with us. Billy, can you introduce yourself, please?
Thanks for ladies first, which is very good. Yes, thank you very much for this opportunity. As you've said, my name's Billy M. Lombe, and I'm the Chief Executive Officer for Center for Zero Waste and Development in Africa. Our organization has transitioned from what we used to call Youth Environment Network Zambia, where we worked on a number of projects. And we were formed in 2007. And specifically, our work, as Center for Zero Waste and Development in Africa, has contributed quite a lot to quite a number of issues in our country. So as a non-profit making organization, actively been engaging the general public, the private sector, organizations, policymakers, and the local government in issues to do in sustainable zero waste strategies and climate solutions that urgently addresses the challenge of the waste management systems in Africa and also in Zambia that face. As CZWDA organization, has so far trained more than 1,000 teachers, community leaders, local governments and parliamentarians in zero waste solutions and climate, change, and further engaged about 120,000, students and pupils, in environmental, to be environmental agents in their communities. And, so in trying to build the capacities also of the local governments and municipality, we are currently also based in Serenje, where we have we've moved from Lusaka after, spending more than 15 years working in Lusaka. So we also here in Serenje, actually, we are supporting our partner, Serenje Town Council, in trying to build their capacity on issues now to manage the waste. And so specifically also what we've been doing as an organization is that we strive to advocate to be for better environmental related policies and build the capacities of citizens' participation, especially youth, women and children, that is in safeguarding our natural resources and whilst addressing the climate justice issues. We have also worked to improve the awareness about the natural resource depletion in our country. As you may know, Zambia, the rate at which we are using some of our natural resources, and that includes our forestries, that it's quite alarming. And advocating for sound environmental policies concerning forestry, waste management, and climate change issues in Zambia and the rest of Africa. So among us, these we've targeted in this awareness campaign are the general citizenry, the communities, government officials, and other functionaries, are responsible for enacting and enforcing laws. Currently, we just recently engaged the parliamentary committee focused on conservation. We had a workshop 2 weeks ago around the focus on single-use plastics, and also looking at the SI number 65, the challenges that it faces, and looking at what are some of the possible issues that can be addressed by parliamentarians. And so this has been just our area working around climate change and other environmental issues around the country for the past 18 years. And specifically, myself, I'm also been working on climate change issues at the African level, where I'm the board chairperson for the largest youth network on climate change in Africa, which is the African Youth Initiative on Climate Change, where we've been engaging young people to participate in UN high-level meetings and other African Union processes to do with climate change and other environmental issues.
Thanks so much, Billy. I'm going to go ahead and turn it back over to Catherine from USAID, who will go ahead and lead our discussion and give a brief introduction to climate change work.
Thank you so much, Paul, and good afternoon, everybody. Sorry for the technical challenges that I had been facing earlier on. So my name is Catherine Tembo. I am Natural Resources Specialist with USAID Zambia. My work revolves mainly around climate change and natural resources management. So in terms of climate change, I think we are all aware that climate change is a cross-cutting issue with quite some significant impacts and also constitutes a big threat to sustainable development of any country. And this does not exclude Zambia. Actually, Zambia is also one of the countries that has been affected by climate change. And we know that climate change threatens to jeopardize economic and social development objectives, as well as people's livelihoods. And mostly in Zambia, we have a number of environmental challenges. And one of the environmental challenges, among many other challenges, includes deforestation. And knowing the effects of deforestation and its contribution to the emission of greenhouse gases, and how deforestation affects habitat loss, especially for wildlife. So then the question is, how is the American Embassy and USAID Zambia addressing this challenge of deforestation as well as climate change? So, well, in terms of responding to addressing the challenge of deforestation and climate change, the US government, working through USAID here in Zambia, actually has a number of programs to combat climate change and protect Zambia's forests and wildlife. So mostly USAID Zambia has actually partnered with the Zambian government, the private sector, and local communities to develop and implement programs that are aimed at basically increasing natural resources management in Zambia. So these programs work around strengthening partnerships that promote sustainable natural resources management, and also works on building the country's capacity, the much needed country capacity to accelerate Zambia's ability to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So basically, the USAID assistance is supporting national as well as local interventions to reduce charcoal demand, and also be able to foster public-private solutions to develop viable alternatives to charcoal. Like I had mentioned, that deforestation is a major challenge, environmental challenge in Zambia. And part of that deforestation is caused by charcoal production. So let me quickly just highlight one specific program that USAID is supporting. This is the USAID funded Alternatives to Charcoal project. And this is our flagship climate change project, which is basically using a market-driven approach to tackling deforestation. So the main purpose of the Alternatives to Charcoal project is basically to reduce charcoal energy consumption in our country, and also be able to catalyze an increase in the use of alternative fuels in order to reduce deforestation. So just in a nutshell, I would summarize and say that the US government's support through USAID is mainly aimed at helping Zambia to be able to achieve its green growth goals, and also contribute to Zambia's capacity to support the implementation of the nationally determined contribution, as well as the climate change policy, in order to be able to reduce greenhouse gas emissions as part of Zambia's priorities. So with that introduction in terms of what we are working on as USAID and the American Embassy, so maybe we can get into the details of our program, and then get to hear more about issues of climate change from our panelists. So I would start with Mr. Billy Lombe, who would want to find out what you would think are some of the sectors in Zambia that have been mostly impacted by climate change. Billy?
Thank you very much. I think the most important thing before we go into that, we need to understand that Zambia in 2007 developed its NAPA document, which is National Adaptation Program of Action. When you look at the issue of climate change, it has the two phases. There's what I usually call the mitigation and adaptation measures. This is a way of how you respond to climate change itself. And mostly like developing countries like Zambia, we are mostly focusing on adaptation. So the NAPA document gives us a very good picture on how climate change has impacted us and what are some of how the different sectors have been impacted because of climate change. So when you look at the NAPA document itself was developed specifically to evaluate the impacts of climate change on the relevant sectors and using what they call MCA, which is multi-criteria analysis. And this has ranked about this has identified like the most urgent needs, to prioritize the 10 immediate, adaptation interventions. And when you look at these sectors, which have been analyzed, some of them are agriculture, food security. So when you look at the issue of some of the sectors, under agriculture and food security, you find there's livestock, especially crops. There's energy also, water, and human health, natural resources, and wildlife. So climate change has impacted us in the different ways. And you've seen that in terms of water, sometimes there's the issue of water scarcity is becoming a very critical issue, where in some areas you find that the wells are drying up and the boreholes which have been sunk are drying up because there's been dry spells experienced in those areas. And so these are critical areas that have been impacted by climate change. And you find that some areas they're having more rains than they used to have. So it's the rainfall pattern in some areas, for example, when you go to the southern part of Zambia. So you find that it doesn't rain as it used to. And the NAPA document itself, at least it gives us a picture of how the whole country has been impacted by climate change. And categorize the country into 3 zones, these agro-ecological zones. And when you look at those agro-ecological zones like Zone 1, Zone 2, and Zone 3, and you find that the least impacted is where, for example, where we are in the central and in the northern part of Zambia, we are the least impacted by climate change. And looking at also some of the hazards are not as it is in the southern part of the country and of the western part of the country. So these areas, and that is why now we are talking about we need to look at how do we adapt to climate change. And of course, we can look at that in terms of how do we adapt to climate change because we have the existing climate change with us. So where, for example, it doesn't rain, of course, they don't have enough rains. Of course, they need to start thinking on what type of crops should they be engaging in. For example, maize, we heavily depend on maize, and with our rain-fed agriculture, climate change is not really helping our largely our population, almost 90% depends on rain-fed agriculture. And it's good that government are stepping up in terms of putting irrigation, having irrigation schemes or projects in different parts of the country to as part of responding to such challenges that climate change is causing in those areas where they have less rains, and so that we can continue going about with our agriculture practices. So this is how different areas have been impacted, and of course there are critical issues that we need to address looking at that. Yes.
Thank you so much, Billy. So Billy has actually highlighted a number of sectors that are affected, including agriculture, as well as the water sector and the southern province as one of the geographical areas that has been hit. Chanda, would you have any additional information in terms of additional sectors you might want to add on, in addition to what Billy has provided?
Thanks, Catherine. I would say that in addition to what the sectors that Billy has spoken about, wildlife and habitat, natural habitat, is a big sector that we often don't think about when we're discussing climate change, because we're very human-centric in the way we think about these issues. But our trees, our soils, how we utilize these has a big impact on how best we can adapt, as Billy said, to climate change impacts. So, for example, he mentioned the different ecoregions and the belts that are most impacted or that are most likely to be impacted by climate change events would definitely need to utilize their natural resources a lot more carefully. They would have to be sustainable about their use. They'd have to ensure that their agriculture is a lot less monoculture, use climate smart agriculture, ensure that they reduce on the deforestation and the soil erosion, and also look into issues such as rainfall harvesting and so on. Another thing that I would say, so we often speak about deforestation in Zambia, and it's almost as if we point the blame is on those who are burning the charcoal, but we seldom look at it from the market perspective. And this is a similar issue with poaching and illegal bushmeat. So the biggest drivers are us who are in the cities, in the urban centers, because we are the market for the charcoal and the illegal bushmeat. So we need to work on understanding our role within the system. So if in my household, I am buying 2 to 3 bags of charcoal every so often, I am contributing to the deforestation in Zambia. And the more we view ourselves as part of this system and also as part of the solution, the better off we'll be. Thanks.
Right. Thank you so much. Maggie, anything to add on? Just quickly, in terms of the sectors, in addition to what has already been mentioned by the previous two speakers. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I think for me, I will add infrastructure. We have seen what the issues of climate change have done as a result of natural hazards like floods, where we've had a lot of infrastructure being submerged in water. So how best can we ensure that we invest in sustainable cities? So I think for me, infrastructure is something that has been very evidently shown. Even the last rains that we had, where we had floods in Lapland province, and about 250 households were flooded. So for me, that is the other sector. My colleagues have already explained in detail other sectors that are impactly affected. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. Those are very valid sectors indeed that have been impacted by climate change. Infrastructure, the agriculture sector, the water sector. So moving on, would want you to talk about what you think should be the role of the civil society, the private sector. What can they do to fight the effects of climate change, either through mitigation or adaptation actions? Or how are they working? How is the civil society and the private sector working to fight the effects of climate change? We can start with Billy.
Thank you very much, Catherine. Specifically, when you look at the role of the civil society and the private sector, in climate change mitigation adaptation. You know, where they play a very critical role in such a way that you know, most of the times when you look at issues of climate change, only left. It's a duty of government, you know, to deal with issues of climate change or any other environmental issues. And this also goes to even when you see someone is throwing litter on the streets, you ask them to pick it up. They say no, the council, they're the ones who come and clean it up. You know? So the role of the civil society and private sector is very critical in such a way that we, especially when it comes to awareness raising, to ensure that we help the government to deal with this thing that is impacting us. Sorry, my videos. I don't know. Can you hear me, Catherine?
Yes, Billy, I can hear you loud and clear. You can go ahead and summarize your contribution also to give chance to the other speakers as well. Thank you, Billy.
Sorry, my video is off. Sorry. Yeah, so for example, organization worked to address the issues of awareness. We've reached out to also the schools, communities, and also to students from different universities. And also we've participated in issues of policy, you know, in processes. And also we've participated when it comes to UN high-level meetings. Those UN high-level meetings, we've been part of the government delegation as a civil society, also to give our views to as a key partner, you know, to ensure that in, whatever the government is planning, especially for the future, we are also part of those processes, as you know, not as usual where you're invited when they are launching an event, but you know, part of the policy formulation. So the civil society comes in very handy to ensure that our policies that have been developed, they also have, you know, address the issues that affects the people in the communities, because we are mostly there in the communities, working with the communities on a daily basis. And of course, the private sector, they are very important in terms of providing, you know, investment and also availability of funding to either the civil society or either government to adapt to the issues of climate change. Yes, so I think that is the role that I see that is quite important.
Thank you so much, Billy. Maggie, would you have anything to add in terms of the role of the private sector and civil society?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so the role of the private sector really is for them to come up with technologies that we could use in the country in addressing issues to do with climate change. As for the civil society, of course, Billy has already stated, you may just allow me to tackle maybe the challenges that we might be facing in addressing issues to do with climate change in the country. Of course, we do have these initiatives that the civil society are coming up with in addressing issues to do with climate change around adaptation and mitigation. Maybe one of the challenges could be financing in addressing these issues. You will agree with me that most civil society organizations, our initiatives being implemented on the ground, we have the direct contact with the most vulnerable. That is where we take our initiatives. So in most cases, we could have excellent ideas, brilliant innovations, but I think if we cannot have much support that we might need from partners, it becomes a little bit challenging. So in a nutshell, yes, we do have a role, actually a greater role, and that is why we are here. And all that we need is that support from everybody.
Right, great. Thank you so much for those details on the role of the private sector as well as the civil society, and also the great work that you people are doing in trying to address the issue of climate change, which is before us. we can move on to the next question. And for this one, I would allow Chanda to be the one to start with the answering of this one in terms of the community and individual actions that people can use to address climate change challenges. What are some of those things that people could work on to be able to address climate change, the challenge of climate change in Zambia? Chanda?
Thanks, Catherine. Thank you for the question. I believe that at individual and community level, there's quite a number of things that we could do, but a lot of this stems from the education and the awareness that several institutions, such as the ones represented here, are working on doing. As Maggie just mentioned, there's a lot of grassroots work that's being done with communities around awareness, climate change, adaptation, what can or cannot be done. But oftentimes it seems the uptake is a little bit slow for various reasons. Some of these are very programmatic issues, and I suppose there's no need to go into that for now. But I believe that as a country, we really need to work on our holistic management and our planning, and looking at development, because we're a developing country. Zambia is a developing country. We want improved socio-economic development for all of our people, and we cannot deny that we're a resource-based economy. And I personally don't believe there's anything wrong with that, but we need to be better at holistic management and holistic planning. So if we're looking at infrastructure development in a new council or an upcoming district, how does that interface with the water sources in that area? How does that interface with the available groundwater resources, for example? Are we building on a water source area? Are we deforesting an area to come up with this infrastructure? Can this be done elsewhere? And what is the role of nature in our development? Because we seem to have separated the two. We seem to think it's either development or nature. But that's not the case for Zambia, and it's definitely not the case for a lot of African countries. So I would say that both at a community and at an individual level, we really need to think about holistic planning and thinking more than just the individual and what is the impact of what I'm doing on the next person. I am a firm believer that we, as Africans, we have a lot of indigenous knowledge on how to take care of our environment. I don't believe any of this has ever left our culture, but we seem to have gotten a bit carried away with trying to develop in a Western way, and we're losing our roots and who we are and our own closeness to nature and living in harmony with nature. So I firmly believe that if we work a lot more on that, we work with the civil society organizations, the private sector as well, driving innovation and bringing in funding, we are in a good place to start. The policy is there, as Billy has mentioned. We have our NAPA, we have our NDC. I believe the framework, we're on the right path, but it's actual individual action. And I would also, I think, a call to action for everybody that is on this call. It's a great step for ordinary Zambians to engage in these issues, but it's also, we need to know what role can I play as an individual, as Chanda, what can I do? I can afforest, plant more trees, be wiser with my water use, for example, care about where certain resources are coming from, and participate as a society. When CEJ, when Maggie's company is doing a campaign, I should take interest and lend my voice and volunteer. Same with Billy's institution, and I think that will get us on the right path. Thank you.
Oh, great. Thank you so much, Maggie. Indeed, that was a big challenge that has been thrown to all of us in terms of a call to action. And Maggie has highlighted on the need for holistic management, and also the importance of planning, and also what each individual can bring to the table in terms of addressing some of these issues related to climate change. Chanda, would you have something just to sum up any additional points that you may have on that issue in terms of what can be done?
Actually, it was Chanda who was speaking. Now it's me, Maggie.
Yes, Maggie, please go ahead. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much. Yeah. So as an individual, what we could do is to invest in energy efficient appliances at individual level, and also ensure that we install renewable energy sources for use at household level. The other thing that we could do as an individual is to speak up. You can be an activist to raise awareness and talk about these issues. You could write the articles. You could engage in community awareness. And then at community level, it is important that we engage in restoring our natural environment. That is very important. And then also we could promote sustainable use of clean energy as a community. And then we could also as well lobby and advocate for the reduction of carbon pollution. So for me, those are the recommendations for both as an individual and also at community level. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So I noticed that the issue of charcoal kept coming up. So maybe let me just also just quickly highlight in terms of just a little bit of detail on what the USAID funded alternatives to charcoal is doing. So it's promoting a market-driven approach to the issue of promoting alternative energy sources away from charcoal. I saw there was a question on what is being done on advocacy. So the alternatives to charcoal activity has a component of advocacy as well as social behavior change to make the people aware that indeed there are safe and reliable alternative energy sources out there that can be used other than charcoal, which has negative impacts, which has impacts on the environment. Then the project is also working on creating a conducive enabling environment for the private sector to be able to participate and engage in and actively make a contribution towards the promotion of alternative energy sources. So I think we should be winding up. I've realized that we are almost running out of time, but probably before I call upon Paul to close our program, I would just want to take this opportunity to thank the great panelists, Billy, Mwape, and Chanda, for the very informative responses and sharing with us the work that they are doing in climate change as part of our Earth Day. So thank you so much, our dear panelists, for spending time on this program, and also the people that logged in, the participants. We are so grateful for your time and for all the very interesting questions that has really generated a very rich discussion out of our program. So allow me to invite Paul to close the program for us. Paul, over to you. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Catherine, and thank you again to everyone. We're going to go ahead and close now. I know that we didn't get to everyone's questions. As I mentioned, go ahead and check the chat for a link to a WhatsApp group. Maybe some of our panelists will be able to join that WhatsApp group as well to continue this discussion for a little while, especially this week while we celebrate Earth Day. So we hope to see you there, and also please look out for future American Spaces events as we go forward. We're going to put up portions of this video and hopefully a link to the full video for today's panel up on our Facebook page on Thursday. So please also look out for that. Thank you again. Billy, Chanda, and Maggie, do you have any final words you'd like to share with us? Go ahead, Billy.
Thank you very much, Paul, for this opportunity and for facilitating this discussion. If you want to know more about our organization, they can always reach out to us on Facebook and also on our website, Center for Zero Waste .Africa.
Go ahead, Maggie.
Thank you. I just want to say thank you so much for inviting us to be part of this discussion. It's very important. If people would love to visit us at CEJ, they can check our website. We're in Ibex Hill, very close to here. They can visit us, and we are always happy to engage young people that we're working with and beyond those that are already here. Thank you.
Great, thanks. Chanda, go ahead.
Yeah, so just to thank everybody, thank you, the participants, for a very engaging session. The unfortunate thing about these things is there always isn't enough time to address all the questions, but we are grateful for your participation and your engagement, and thank you very much for having WPAZ. We're grateful for the opportunity to share some of the work that we're doing. And yeah, looking forward to further engagement online. I've shared our website details, and we are likely to set up an internship program a little bit later in the year, and those details will be shared on our Facebook. So kindly like our page and follow us for more info. Thank you.
All right, great. Well, thank you everyone again. Thank you, Catherine, for being our moderator today. And we hope to see everyone at our next workshop in the near future. Thanks, everyone. Bye.